Hi guys, this is the first lecture of the semester. This isn't a video lecture that you have to watch at home, but as you can remember, I'm recording all of the lectures, so if you missed anything or you want to come back and review something, you're going to always have these video lectures. So let's start with Geography 101. This is the introduction to this course. Okay, so one of the things that we practiced doing was identifying all of these places on the world map. What are numbered are the continents. There are 7 of them, and then the letters represent oceans. So we look at number 1, that is the continent of Asia. Number 2 is Africa. Number 3 is Antarctica. Number 4, North America. Number 5 is South America. Number 6 is Australia, and number 7 is Europe. Keep in mind that continents are not the same as countries, okay? Continents are these large land masses, and in these continents there are several countries. The only continent that is also a country is Australia. A represents the Atlantic Ocean. B is the Pacific Ocean, and remember the Pacific Ocean connects from here to this side of the world. Remember that the world is round, so it's a continuation. So the Pacific Ocean also is right here. C is the Arctic Ocean, and D is the Indian Ocean. One of the things that we discussed in class was why we should study geography. And I mentioned that there are certain things that you should know as an adult so that you can have intelligent conversations. And where things are located is one of them. So if you have a chance, log on to BlendSpace and look at this video from Miss Teen USA and tell me why you think geography is important so that we don't sound like Miss South Carolina. One of the things that I also mentioned in class was that 73% of Americans between the ages of 18 to 24 don't know where Iraq is on a map. And that's about 1 in 4 people. And Iraq is something that we should probably know since we are engaged in a lot of conflict in that part of the world, and we fought a war there. Okay, so what is geography? Geo equals Earth. That's what that means. Geo means Earth. And graphy is a field of study. So geography describes the physical and the human aspects of life on Earth, not just the mountains and the rivers. We're also talking about the people that live on it. And geography is important because we need to understand how other people behave and why they behave that way and what they believe in, so that we can interact with each other and learn from each other and be able to live peacefully in this world with people who have different practices and beliefs than us. So that's why we study geography. So let's talk about cartography. Cartographers are people who make maps, and cartography is the science or the practice of drawing maps. And cartographers and geographers sometimes work hand in hand, and they both use different types of tools to gather their information when they're studying the world. One of the pieces of technology that they use is the GIS, the Geographic Information Systems. Those analyze information geographically, and they make maps that kind of look like 3D, and we can look at different layers of the Earth, right? The GPS, the Global Positioning System, you all might be familiar with that. Most phones have one now, determines location. That is latitude and longitude. Remote sensing is the gathering and recording of satellite information. And through remote sensing, they can gather all kinds of geographic information from satellites that are orbiting space. And they're able to use this information to make maps and to make different studies about geography. And aerial photography is also used. If you've ever looked at Google Earth, that's aerial photography. So these satellite images are taking pictures of the Earth, and we're using that to make different kinds of maps and to study the world in different ways. Maps are very important tools for geographers. There are different kinds of maps that we look at. There's a topographical map, and that is one right there. So it's telling you the different kinds of elevation that you can find on this particular area. you have the physical map here, and that's a physical map of Africa, and you can see that there are oceans surrounding it. You can see that there is a few lakes, maybe a river. There's mountains, deserts. The green parts probably show some vegetation. So that's a physical map. Another type of map that geographers use are population maps. You can see here the different kinds of, political maps. Okay, so political maps will show you political boundaries. So this is a map of the United States, and you can see the political boundaries. All of these states are separated by lines. Okay, so this is a political map. It's showing boundaries. When we look at the world and we try to make it flat, to put it on paper, we run into a little problem, because it is impossible to take a round Earth and make it look flat without stretching it or messing it up. Right? The part that gets messed up is called distortion. So if you look at this image here, you can see that as we flatten it out, the sizes of the continents change, and particularly the ones that are right here. Look how small Africa is when it's flat, and look how large it gets as we change the projection of the map. Okay. And there are several ways that a map can be distorted. A map can be distorted through area. The size of the land is going to change depending on the type of map that you're using. There's also a distortion of shape. So some might look a little longer, some might look a little fatter. The shape changes also when you change the projection. Distance. The distance between land masses changes because of the way that it's laid out. So maybe the oceans look a little larger and now it looks like things are further apart. And then direction. So directions can be changed as well depending on which way you're viewing a globe. If you turn a globe upside down, the part that is north is going to be facing a different direction, and that is also a different way to look at a map. One of the very popular map projections that we use is the Mercator projection. The Mercator projection is a cylindrical projection. It's distorted greatly at the poles. So remember the image from earlier, you could tell that Africa kept changing in size because that's very, very close to the equator. All right, and so it changes significantly. This navigation is useful for naval ships because the directions are accurate, right? So naval ships use this kind of map. Then you have the polar projection. The polar map projection is a planar projection, and the major problem with this projection is that it does not allow all of the Earth to be shown at one time. It's very useful for airplane navigation because the distance is shown correctly, but we can only look at pieces of the Earth at a time, not all of it. The Robinson projection is what we know as a compromised projection because it minimizes distortion. So what you see here is very close to accurate, but the most accurate representation of the world is in a globe. It's used for data representation because it has minimal distortion. Right? And here I'm going to talk about the parts of a map. Right? One of the parts of a map that you need to know is a title. The title is going to tell you what the map is about. So this particular map is about the Middle East according to its title. And then you have a legend. If the map has a legend, that legend is a key. It's going to tell you what all of these symbols represent. So this star means that it's a capital city. And you can go to the map, find the star, and you know that that is a capital city. And then, of course, you have all the other symbols which are representing other features in this map. Okay. A unit of measurement on the map that measures the distances is known as the scale. Okay, and almost all maps have one. So this is an example right here, and it measures how many miles or kilometers each of these inches or centimeters represents. Okay, that's the scale. Most maps will also have a compass rose, and that is going to show orientation. A compass rose shows the cardinal directions on a map. There's north, east, south, and west. And at times, they're also going to show the intermediate directions. So you can see the northeast, southeast, southwest, and northwest as well. Sometimes you see just the north, sometimes you see north and south, sometimes you see just the north, east, south, and west, and sometimes you get all of the directions. Depends on the map that you're looking at. Maps, for the most part, might use a grid system, and that is a system to show longitude and latitude, and we'll talk a little bit more about those later, and we'll do some practice with these, but do know that this is for location, so we can determine where things are, and we use these coordinates to do that, and we'll talk about that later. There are different types of maps that we look at, and they show all types of different information. Physical maps, like the ones that you see here, are going to show the physical features, and they use either shading or relief to show texture or even different colors. Your political maps are going to show the features such as national boundaries and borders. Sometimes they're in black and white, sometimes they use color, but they'll show you different countries, where one thing begins, where another one ends, right? These maps also change over time as political borders change, because these borders aren't necessarily permanent. They're not always rivers, they're just imaginary lines, and so as countries' borders change, so do these maps. For example, here you have Europe before World War II, after World War II, and then after the breakup of the Soviet Union. So this is a map of the same continent, and it has a lot of different political borders. Population maps are important to geographers because they look at the distribution of people, where people live. Population distribution shows how the population of areas is spread out throughout the world, and we will talk about that in the next few days. Population density will tell you how many people are concentrated in 1 square mile or kilometer of an area. So you can tell where the population concentrations are by looking at the different colors of this map. And then we also have climate maps. Climate maps show the climatic characteristics of a region. So you could see where it tends to be rainy, where it tends to be hot, where it tends to be dry. And of course you have vegetation maps. Those are the maps that show where plants grow in areas of a continent or a state. You can see that the darker areas are where you're going to have forestry, and then these lighter areas you might have deserts. So usually these are closely tied together because these types of climates might have a certain kind of vegetation. So they're related. And then we have special purpose maps. Special purpose maps are designed to show a specific type of information. Like this one, for instance, is telling us about world religions, and this next one talks about world languages. So it shows how different things are distributed throughout the world, and they're not necessarily related to landforms or political boundaries, but it's showing a theme, right? So there's a theme of religion here, and there's a theme of languages over here. Economic activity maps will show us the types of jobs, the types of natural resources that are available in a place, like the one that we have here. It's talking about China's economic activity, and they show how the countries are using their resources to produce goods and services. Right? If you look at this and ask yourself, where is the most manufacturing taking place in China? Well, we can tell that it's in the east near the coast. And what is the main economic activity in Western China? By looking at this map, we can conclude that it's nomadic herding. And that's the end of our slideshow. So if you have any questions, make sure that you write them down and come back to me. And thanks for watching.